Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. What is going on with our supply chain, the economy, even houses and the prices? I'm confused on how long this is going to last, how it's affecting our well-being and our ability to connect with others and grow manufacturing. So I've brought on one of my experts that I have in my circle, Jim Ray. He has been working with businesses on growth and marketing, including manufacturing and distribution. And excited to ask you, Jim, what is going on?
That's like the $10,000 question right about now. Trevor, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you again. Welcome back to my studio this time. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad to have you in here and share some time with you. I think right now, as we kind of look at it without getting political, and that's something most people don't want to do today. When you look at the economy, we've got inflation rising. You've got issues with supply chain that it's going to take a long time for that to work its way out. And there are a whole bunch of other things coming up, right? We're getting ready to head into another election year, all this other craziness that's going to happen. I think realistically, people are getting a little nervous. And I think that's both at the business level, but also at the household level. And that you sometimes bring that into the office, and that's one of the risks. And I think today we're going to talk about that. When I look at your whole model here, mindfulness manufacturing, is really how you show up. I think for leaders under this next 12 to 24 months, it's going to be critical to understand that.
And I see that I have some great colleagues that I talk to that are deeply into that supply chain field at high levels, and I feel their weight when I talk to them. So that is a concern of the burnout of we're working hard to keep manufacturing going and trying to balance that out with how much can we give and how do we keep showing up in such a way that we have a positive impact on how we make others feel. And when you're grounded, you can always show up as your best self. It's just not realistic, it seems like right now. I don't even know what to say when I have those types of conversations with people that are that entrenched. So what are you seeing, Jim, with the businesses that are thriving, that are adjusting? What's different with the different businesses that you see out there?
I think without getting into the individual businesses and the economics related to there too, I think one of the things that is going to really enable any business out there to succeed is their ability to communicate effectively. I think it's always going to come down to that. You see these cartoons out there every once in a while, these examples where it says, management is pushing people kicking and screaming to achieve the objective. Leadership is inspiring them to do so on their own, right? And I think true leaders are going to have to be super, super cognizant, especially in the upcoming 12 to 24 months, even more so than you have been, about both what you say and what you hear. And I think we'll break that open here in just a few minutes, but I think communication is everything right now because there are going to be a lot of questions. There are going to be a lot of people nervous. I think a lot of things are going to go on outside of the business that are really going to make people stop and go, hey, we don't have control. And when you don't have control over something, suddenly the anxiety gets rolling because now you're at risk of being impacted over something which, by something over which you have no control. So I think as I look at it, okay, I think it comes down to communication. And so what you say, in other words, are you positive? You've got to be authentic. You've always got to be authentic. You've got to be able to take the room and say, hey, look, I may not have all the answers right now, but we'll work through them. And I'll let you know what I know. And we'll talk about it and we'll ask questions and we'll figure it out together. I mean, if there's a silver lining to COVID, it's the fact that we all just went through this. So we've kind of had to look at the old paradigms and break a lot of them and kind of put ourselves on a new trajectory and a new way of doing business, and some of those legacy processes are no longer in place because we've just had to learn how to do business differently. So this actually has kind of prepared us for what's coming, right? So what you say, and it's okay to raise your hand and say, I don't have all the answers right now. But I think that authenticity and that honesty and the integrity that you back it up with is going to help carry the day. It's going to help soothe people's nerves a little bit so that they say, okay, we're in good hands and we're in this together, right? Now, the flip side of that is not only what you say, the flip side is what you hear. I think a confident leader has to be very, very cognizant about giving people a chance to voice their concerns, to voice the things that are making them nervous, the things they're dealing with, the pain points. That's out there. And that has a chance, if you don't let that relief valve open up, you've got a distinct risk of having it fester, and then you lose morale. Things happen. Again, people are scared. And if that happens, it can get out of control very, very quickly.
But Jim, there's no time for that.
No. Well, there's not. I mean, there's not. The one thing that's going to enable a company, regardless of the balance sheet, regardless of the economy, is the people. The people within the business is what makes it win or lose. And leaderships are tasked with that responsibility. They, by their very nature, have that responsibility on their shoulders. That's what you signed up for. And how you communicate is going to be critical, again, over these next 12 to 24 months.
So why is it that we're always drawn to the task of the day, right? The part that we're short on, the supplier that we need to focus on, or maybe the metric that's off that we're trying to drive. But yet we know that this whole concept of between what you say and what you hear and taking that in, and that ability to articulate your communication is the differentiator.
Yeah.
How do we stay grounded in the fact of, hey, I need to take out an extra 2 minutes and really see what they have to hear so I can understand that perspective better, and then I can get the supply chain going better, or whatever your block may be right now.
Right. Well, I think you've got to measure and manage the business, right? You can't get lazy now. In fact, you've got to get sharper in terms of what you're analyzing. Make sure you're analyzing the right metrics, and make sure you've got good feedback. Make sure the data is full of integrity. Make sure it's not sloppy data, because then you'll make sloppy decisions, right? So some of this right now is back to basics. And it's, there are certain things that we have to do. We have to execute well to make sure that we stay in business. But there are some things that are going to be out of your control. So this may be the time to where you need to reach out and start cultivating new vendor relationships, because maybe your current vendor just can't get you there. Maybe they have problems. They're not able to get the supplies you need. Maybe you need to have a backup. Your plan B suddenly becomes much more important. Plan C may become much more important, because we're all kind of in this together, right? So I think a lot of it right now is you still have to execute on the numbers, but it comes back to people. It comes back to people. And you need, I started off after college, after undergrad, I went to work at GE Appliances here in Louisville. And one of the things that Jack Welch at the time, he instilled in that culture was something that they called workout, where we brought cross-functional teams into rooms and we dealt with a problem and we figured it out, right? So we didn't just have a manager's perspective or a supervisor's perspective. We had some people from the line. We had some people from engineering. We had some people over here from purchasing. Everybody was in the room, and everybody had an equal voice. And it allowed us to really look at different perspectives. And you're going to find answers where you least expect it sometimes. When you get the ego out of the way and you actually look at who knows this process or knows this issue, and sometimes there's just a really good synergy in the room if you allow that to really work. And then that becomes part of the culture, and other people realize, oh, okay, we can talk kind of freely here. Okay, that, again, as we get really pressured, as things get really, really tight, being able to let people know, hey, I value your opinion. Okay, that means I have a stake now in the solution. I have a stake now in the success of this business. If that's the case, I have a little control in an area where, up to this point, I didn't feel I had any control over. And that's both inside the office, inside the business, and outside. Now I have a little stake in my own destiny, and that's awesome.
I was just talking to a successful leader this morning in a senior position. It's interesting, and I asked him what's going on and what has he been focusing on and what has gone better for him. And he said just that skill that he's been working on is not giving the answer when he knows it. And he's got a group of teams there where asking more questions and just seeing what they come up with, knowing that takes more of the ownership. And that's a really strong leader I was talking to. So I can imagine the ones that maybe aren't listening to a podcast or just kind of doing it the way they've done it because we're going to fight our way through this. Rather, we need to, I call it like letting go, like just let go a little bit, use your ears, be curious. So that's something we've talked about on the podcast before. But when you say like keeping grounded in the fact of we got to focus on results, this isn't just about being kind at work and mindful. It's about focusing on the right things. So when you say know your numbers, what does that look like? What are the things that we should be focused on?
I think right now, when people are we're obviously in the fourth quarter now. We're in the middle of the fourth quarter. We're finishing up a year. We're getting ready to go into a challenging year. So you're looking at your sales team a lot of times to, hey, you guys got to get out there and close more deals. But it's not about top line revenue. It's about net margin. So making sure that you put some borders in there so that your sales team doesn't go out and all of a sudden sell, $3 million at 2% margin. You may not be able to survive on 2% margin. You may have just gone out of business profitably, is what I used to say. I wrote an article about that years ago. You've got to be mindful of the profit side of the business. So if you're going to offer a discount, okay, that's fine. Maybe in this environment you're going to have to, but make sure there's something else for it. I was always a big fan of if then. I was in sales and sales management for 20 plus years. And it was always about the negotiation, right? It's the if then. If I give you this, then I need to get this. So maybe it's a bundle. Maybe it's another product or service that you can bundle in that allows me another revenue stream, right? So that I'm not just in there on one piece at a discount where I used to be able to make 30% margin. Now I'm making 15% margin. Was that really a good piece of business to go after? I don't know. I mean, if you're forced with I either get that business or I turn off the lights, well, yeah, but thinking creatively, but at the same time, making sure that you know your margin and making sure that everybody in the business understands, look, guys, we have to hit certain metrics here. We can't just give away the farm trying to get revenue in here, okay? If I can't afford to pay you for the work you're doing, it wasn't worth doing, right? So you've got to be really, really careful. And every business has its own KPIs, has its own metrics that they're going to look at and say, yeah, these are the core fundamentals that we have to execute on. You can't get away from that. But understanding them, looking at them maybe a little differently, and understand what's really driving them or not driving them. Yeah, we've all kind of done this, but I think here in the short term, it's going to become super, super important. And sometimes that gets out, that means you've got to get out with your other groups, your sales team and whomever, and really, really explain what's going on and really, really help them develop the right mindset, because they may have to shift their mindset a little bit. What's worked in the past is not going to work in the next 12 months. I just don't think it is. There's too many other macro factors that are kind of out of our control that without education and great communication, you're gonna open some risk.
I could see how the numbers tie in with the mindfulness. I was at a plant at one point where there was a shift of leadership, and the next leader that came in was very focused on the numbers, but just not sitting in a boardroom. He really wanted the organization to understand the numbers. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because I thought that should be confidential and we got to be careful with this. And we didn't open up the books, but definitely communicating the numbers at a higher level. It just got people more engaged into it. It was really interesting just how much empowerment that gave to say, oh, okay, there's where we are.
Yeah.
That transparency, it's like, oh, that's different leadership.
Here's the why behind the fact, right? Here's the why. And I think not giving people certain numbers, granted, you're not going to give everything, obviously. There's some things that are confidential, as you said, but don't underestimate, your talent. They're adults just like all of us, right? And they can make good decisions. They can make rational decisions, but help them understand it. You said earlier, you were speaking to a leader who was challenging himself to not give the answer, even though he may already known it, right? Okay, that's fantastic. What he's doing is he's allowing them to arrive at the answer, right? So the benefit to that is it's not your answer. So if it fails, it's on you. Hey, we're all in this because this was our solution. This was our answer. So now we have a stake in it. And that building of consensus right there is much more powerful. As a young manager, I was horrible at that. I thought I had all the answers. I was a smart guy. I went out, got an MBA, got all this stuff. I thought I was a smart guy. But I didn't realize the guys on the line had seen this, done this. They had their own ideas. They knew the business better than I did. I just had the title. And being able to humble yourself a little bit comes back into that being mindful, right? Being mindful of who you are and where you are. And it's not just you winning, the team has to win. And the team can cut you down quickly and cause you to fail if they're not with you. And you've got to respect that. And sometimes the answers lie in places that you least expect them. But good communication fosters that.
And we talked about finding new vendors. Ooh, that's pretty hard right now. And finding new employees is even harder. So when you have those conversations and they know what's going on and we're connected and feel a part of this because we've communicated that, and it's not just that overall target, okay, this is how we're going to get there. And I think that may separate some of the manufacturing plants are the ones that, even with outside your own company communicating, within your own company, what can you share? How real can you be without breaking confidentiality?
Right.
But just balancing that with, hey, this is how it is. And you start to earn that trust. And we're in this together. So it's not just one person's idea and that person's fault. It's kind of like, hey, we were all at the table. We talked this through, and we're either going to get through this together or we're going to find out that that wasn't the right way and we're going to try something else.
Right. I think, one piece of advice I'd give to a lot of leaders and even, supervisors out there, you've got to make sure you've got other people around you that you can vent to, people that you can discuss the issues with. Again, some things are confidential and you can't go, very deep into them, but it's often a good idea to get outside of the boardroom or outside of your core group within the company, because we tend to put the blinders on, and we're in this silo, and this is how we think, this is our culture, this is what we're going to do. But sometimes having somebody else looking at it objectively, an objective third party, sometimes that has a lot more value and adds perspective that you may not have seen because, well, this is just how we do it. Well, why? And it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared about things. It's okay to have those feelings, but what you do with those feelings is going to determine your success or failure, right? So being able to talk them through, being able to talk about how I'm feeling inside. If I can get that out and deal with that and rationalize that, then I can show up at work and be much more healthy inside my head. I can be much more mindful of how I'm showing up, and I can be much more effective as a leader, because again, that is a role that I took on voluntarily, so I have an obligation to my team to show up that way, ready to go, confident as I can be, but full of integrity and honesty. And that's really what's going to win the game at the end of the day. But I think cultivating that group of advisors outside of your normal channels will make all the difference, especially when things get a little complicated.
I didn't just ask Jim to say that. He said that on his own. Because if you're
I
a
listen to
regular
your podcast, man.
if you're a regular listener, that is my space of, hey, the feelings are there. It's whether you suppress them, whether you're able to constructively communicate that so you can connect with others. That is that whole perspective. And we just ran a community program with some different leaders of different manufacturing plants, and that definitely did help. I mean, you do have the aspect of, oh, geez, it's another company. Do I want to share this? And there's going to be some limitations, but there were some really in-depth discussions of, hey, I'm having this problem too. These are some of our approaches. And it's having that mindset of abundance, that there's enough work out there. And the more we can just openly talk of, hey, I am feeling stressed of these supply issues or hiring this person, and what are we doing different? And how do we make the people that are working here today, how do we communicate with them so they're advocates for the company? Not only do they not leave, but they also bring other people into the company because of how they're speaking. So I really like the fact of getting perspective and just having some conversations with people outside of your own building, because we get stuck in where we are and really, there's different things going on out here when I can pull myself out and have that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, because sometimes we just get lazy, we get overwhelmed, we get nervous, and as guys in particular, I know there's women obviously listen to this, but they'll be the ones shaking their heads at this statement. Guys tend to hold up. We cave up when we get nervous or when we get unsure. We tend to back ourselves back into the cave and try to figure it out and figure out whether we're going to fight or flight, right? And sometimes we recede instead of moving forward. And I think that's instinctual. I think that goes back to that reptile brain that you may have talked with your audience about in episodes past. But I think there is something to that. And being able to vent that a little bit, being able to get a different perspective, being able to share those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions, I think, one, that's healthy, but I think that's also a positive step to letting other people know, okay, yeah, I have seen that. And sometimes in those conversations, you'll find an answer that you would have missed before. And whether that's talking with your spouse, whether that's talking with another group, maybe that's talking with, if nothing else, a therapist. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's good to get that out because you've got to equip yourself to step back in the ring and continue the fight. And that's something that, again, as a leader, that is incumbent upon us. And if you don't think you're a leader, there's an old book out there that says lions don't have to roar. That's about the guy who's not the CEO, but he's that supervisor. He's that team member. He's whomever, or she's whomever, who actually has the respect of their peer group. And those people are often influencers. And being able to show up also at that level and being effective in what you're doing and moving the team forward toward the goal is important. It's not just top down from the C-suite. Okay, it's about every one of us showing up, being ready to go, and I think we're going to be required to do that, especially in the near term.
And there's a lot of discussion on diversity and diversity training, and a lot of mandates, but really, it actually comes down to the economy, to your business. Like, you're going to make better business decisions because you're going to have different perspectives in your own building. And I know that this is why women in manufacturing need to grow to help the industry, because it brings a different perspective. It's not just about having a more diverse workforce because that's the right thing to do. It's actually because it'll actually drive your profits and how you enjoy your work, and you're going to grow as a person because now you've got to be more curious about others, and now you're going to be able to train that brain to think differently. And
I think that difference in wiring is an advantage. And I think when you have a diverse team of leadership, you do have different backgrounds, you have different approaches. You're just going to see the same situation differently, and being able to ensure that your leadership team and just the normal teams around the factory floor, making sure they're diverse enough, I think that is absolutely a strength. And the smart companies are going to be the ones that are cognizant of that and are working toward those goals.
So even coming from a business, economy, financial growth, and marketing Jim on our show today, we can see that it does come back to how we show up. And it does come back to the person. It's going to separate us. We still need to tie into those numbers, but there's going to be many different things that are going to separate us. So, Jim, thanks so much for coming on today.
Absolutely.
You're a special partner of the Mindfulness Manufacturing Podcast, because where I'm sitting right now is where we record our original intro, outro, when we didn't know what this was going to look like, and we're coming up to our 2-year anniversary. So thank you very much for that general discussion where I ran into you about podcasting, and I don't know if this would still be going today if I didn't meet you. So thank you for all your advice and different expertise that you bring to our industry, and for coming on today.
No, brother, it's a pleasure. I am so excited to see how your mission here has really, really evolved. It's 2 years in, which is crazy. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, right? And just to watch the passion that you bring every day when you show up, the mindfulness that you bring to your environment is just absolutely outstanding. So I wish you the best. I wish you a lot of continued success in this. And thanks for the opportunity, man.
We're almost at 8,000 downloads, which to me is still totally awesome. And the people that have tuned in and continue to kind of give me feedback, and different guests or different thoughts on what's adding value, I trust that you've enjoyed today. Thank you so much for listening, and have an awesome day.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.